In this video, I'm going to give you guys a quick overview of what skills a composer's assistant should have, what you're typically responsible for, and what to expect from the experience. Most people applying to these roles are only focused on the fact that they themselves know how to write music, but when you're assisting someone else, what you'll be tasked with at the beginning has to do with supporting the lead composer rather than composing yourself. That's why I made this short video to give you a clear-cut list of everything you should be prepared to do exceptionally well in order to assist a professional composer. So let's begin with this quick overview of what skills a composer's assistant should have. Skill number 1, amazing organization and communication skills. You'll typically be asked to handle files going to or coming from the composer's studio and the editing and post-production team. So it's gonna be your job to make sure everything is organized and that the studio is running efficiently, especially during tight deadlines. It's important to note that it's very common for a lead composer to be addressing notes from the director or producers while the picture is actively changing. This basically means that new updated versions are constantly being sent over of the picture. So it's really important that you're able to follow or create your own file naming protocols in order to keep everything super organized. This way you can be sure that the correct version of a cue is being sent out and the composers on a team always have the latest cut of a film or series updated inside of their sequencer. If a composer sits down to write thinking that they're working on the latest picture, but they're actually working on a version that's outdated, it can cause significant setbacks. And if this happens, all of their music has to then be chopped up and conformed to the latest picture. It can cause a lot of extra work, and nobody wants that to happen. A great way to add value to a team is if an organizational system and structure is not yet in place. In order to avoid mistakes like the one I just pointed out, know how to create one. Offer to create a PDF document using Google Docs or Sheets that clearly outlines file naming conventions and how they're implemented. Offer to have the composer use it internally for their entire team. So skill number 2 is knowing as much as possible about the sequencer used by the lead composer. Most commonly, this is going to refer to either Logic or Cubase, in addition to a basic knowledge of Pro Tools. The great thing about this is that these are easy skills to acquire. All of the information that you need to know is either in the software manual or on countless YouTube videos which are made by the program's developers. Most people simply don't want to read the manuals, but doing so is an incredibly simple way to add value as an assistant. So to me, this is a really important lesson, and it goes beyond knowing your software. If you do what most people don't want to do, don't make the time to do, and simply don't feel like doing, you're more likely to find opportunities and get results that most people aren't able to. Here's some examples of tasks that you'll need to be able to perform inside a sequencer: importing video files, setting up projects to sync with video files, printing stems, conforming and editing cues, score preparation, creating templates, setting up for live recordings, editing automation, and arranging MIDI instruments. And that all leads to skill number 3, which is having a basic knowledge about recording and using hardware for recording. This way, if you have that basic knowledge, when a soloist comes into the studio, you're gonna know how to set it up, properly route and sound check a microphone in the sequencer of the lead composer's choice. A 4th skill you should have is the ability to efficiently do research. A lot of projects involve finding virtual instruments, live musicians, or other assets so that a composer can execute a particular musical task. Knowing how to conduct effective research quickly and then organize your findings for review can be really helpful. Skill number 5 is printing stems. This is where you're going to export and organize several WAV files from a cue that together make up the entire piece of music. And this can be a really easy task if you're printing stems from a template that's been set up for efficient stemming. I'll go into more detail about setting up a template like this in a future video because it's a really crucial part of working efficiently. But it can also be an incredibly time-consuming task if the sequencer is instead set up to have each stem group printed individually. There are reasons that it may be set up for this, and it depends on the preferences of the lead composer, how much processing power the rig has, and other variables that we're going to discuss at length. Skill number 6 is orchestra prepping. This is the process of getting a cue ready for the orchestra to perform, so it involves editing MIDI, printing reference files, coordinating with the orchestrator, counting how many minutes of music each section is expected to perform, and getting files to the copyists so that they can create sheet music. Everything here is like really important because orchestrators, copyists, orchestra sessions, and all of that is really expensive. This one skill pretty much requires you to use all of the other skills that we've talked about. Skill number 7 is cataloging past cues. So using a program such as SoundMiner or Source Audio, you may be tasked with labeling the emotional makeup or intention of a cue so that that cue is easily searchable for reuse on other episodes. This is basically data entry. It can be particularly helpful on long-running procedural television series where the same style cue can be reused over and over again throughout a season with the appropriate alterations being made so that the cue fits into a new scene as if it was written from scratch. This brings us to skill number 8, which is creative input. This can be anything from giving an opinion about editing music from a previous cue like we just discussed, to fleshing out creative ideas from the lead composer. And this one in particular is a skill that can get pretty tricky because at a certain point, if your creative input starts to become an integral part of the score consistently, you're likely ready to discuss some form of credit, which we will do a deep dive into during a later video. So those are the baseline skills I'd recommend having and promoting to composers when you're applying for an assistant position. From my own experience and a long discussion with other colleagues about their teams, I can say confidently that if you were able to master everything that I just outlined, you're going to be an incredibly valuable member to pretty much any composing team. As stated in separate videos, we're going to take a deep dive into each of those tasks so that you have the clearest understanding possible of how to perform each of these skills. If you're interested in learning more detailed information about everything we just covered, check out modernmediacomposer.com, where you can sign up for free tools such as virtual instruments and videos that break down how to do everything I just mentioned. If you find this information helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you can go ahead and give a like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Doing so allows me to continue making free content just like this. I appreciate you taking the time to watch, learn, and as always, I hope this was helpful.